Well, hello there, fellow travelers through space and time. It's the Big Heavy, and much like Superbad, my videos about my desk setup were kind of my surprise hits of the summer.
You changed your name to McLovin?
So I wanted to do a video on my travel setup, specifically my digital setup, again with a focus on those of you that have, what I'll call in air quotes, a real job. And for me, that's going out to client sites, that's jockeying slides, that's putting together spreadsheets, that's responding to email, whether you're in, the lounge in London or you're in a factory in San Fran. I've spent the better part of my 20-year career traveling in some capacity, so I feel like I've ironed this out fairly well, and hopefully I can give you a tip or two that you can learn from. I'm just out there trying to remain productive, which for me means being able to work pretty much anywhere, being able to set up quickly, being able to keep all my devices charged, being able to connect and communicate from just about anywhere. If you're somebody that's just out there trying to make stuff happen, trying to keep the man or the manette who oversees you and pays your mortgage happy, maybe you'll get something good out of this. So let's start out with the bag. This is not a bag review. All I'll say about bags, I have, a half dozen. I'm a bit of a bag whore, but this particular one is my backpack. It's made by Mystery Ranch. I think this model has since been discontinued, but all I'll say is, generally I like to have a decent backpack that I like, that's not too huge, that doesn't make you look like you're going on an Everest expedition. And I also like a briefcase for those incidences where I have to be a little classier. Generally I like something that has carry handles, or it has a messenger bag type strap so you can fling it over your shoulder when you're working the airports or the trains or something like that. But get something that appeals to you. I would spend a little more rather than less on a bag. Get something that's going to hold together, that you feel good about, that represents your unique personality. And please, if you're a frequent traveler, don't get the generic giant rectangular Toomey sack that just screams out, hey, I'm a boring soulless consultant and please hate me as I elbow you trying to get my exit row seat. So with that out of the way, let's get into technology, and let's start with kind of the main computing device. And this is where, depending on my trip and kind of my mission, I'll make one of three choices. So choice number one, I've got a iPad Pro. I think this is maybe the 2018 model. So at this point, it's a couple years old. It's got the little, portfolio keyboard case. And this is not meant to be an iPad review by any means, but what I will say is I can do 80% of my work on this puppy. So if I'm going on an overnight, if I'm going on like a weekend or kind of a mixed trip where I'm going away for 2 or 3 days and one of those days is a work day and the other are maybe hanging out with people on the weekend, I'll bring the iPad if I can. And this guy, I can respond to emails, I can do Teams calls, I can create and edit PowerPoints, although things get a little funky when you're trying to do that. But it is possible. I can work on a spreadsheet as long as there's no macros. So I can get done a good portion of what I need. So, my initial reaction to any business trip is, can I just bring the iPad? The other plus about the iPad is it's a good entertainment device. I can browse the web, I can watch movies, you can play games and goof around on the plane if you need a little downtime. So it's a really nice package for taking care of business, entertainment, and all that stuff in, sub 3 pounds. It's got a good battery life. It's a great device if you can just solo with it. So that's kind of my option one. My option two, if I need to do something that's a little more in depth, maybe if I'm having to do a lot of writing and want a nicer keyboard, or if I'm going to be presenting or doing more screen sharing, I'll bring my MacBook. I did do a review of this MacBook. It's almost a year since I've gotten it. It's the 14-inch M1 MacBook. Love this computer. The variance between Mac OS and Windows has gotten to the point where it's almost irrelevant. Everything's a web app. All the key office productivity tools are available on both Windows and Mac. So there's not really this kind of stark choice of, am I a Mac person or am I a Windows person, as those old commercials used to go.
Hello, I'm a Mac and I'm a PC.
My desktop's a Windows desktop, so I use both. I don't think there's a huge pro or con to either one. What I like about the MacBook, put together well, runs pretty flawlessly. Super fast startup from suspend. I can open this lid up, type my password in, and be ready to work in 3-4 seconds. Some of the Windows PCs, since different companies make the hardware and the software, sometimes they struggle with that. So I like that this guy's fast. I get a 6 to 9 hour battery life depending on what I'm doing. Not the lightest machine, but pretty robust, pretty well built. The other thing that I think people underestimate sometimes with Apple is the fact that they've got retail stores all over the world. And if you got a problem, you can go in there, get your computer looked at, in some cases get it fixed. That's kind of my device of choice. My employer lets me bring my own device, so they issue a generic Windows laptop of some sort that I have sitting in a drawer that I use for very specific instances. My third option from a technology loadout perspective is to bring both of these guys. That's pretty rare because, then you're carrying around 6 pounds of computing devices. And, I'm going to mention weights a few times. Number one, they're approximate. Number two, I'm not trying to be a weight weenie, but if you're going to schlep all this crap through an airport where you can cut out a pound or so, it's probably worthwhile from the perspective of keeping your back healthy and cutting down the wear and tear on your body that you're already putting enough on, dealing with overcrowded airports and that sort of thing. Generally, the only time I'll bring both devices is if I'm going on a long trip. If I'm doing a couple-week international trip where maybe I just want to sit and watch some movies on the flight, having the iPad is nice. Maybe if I want to read a couple or 3 books and just get tired of looking at the Mac during the workday and want something to goof around in the evenings at the hotel, I'll bring both devices. In terms of the other large piece of technology I travel with, and once again, this is something I've reviewed separately and I'll put a link up and you can check that out. I do like the remarkable notepad. I've got the little leather folio. I've got the pencil with the eraser thing, which I highly recommend if you're going to buy this. Get the pencil with the eraser nub, not just the generic one. What I like about this, essentially infinite pages, essentially replaces a paper notebook and does, nothing more, nothing less. And it'll sync and back up everything to the cloud when I get home, and I can share PDFs of whatever notes I take. There's a fair argument that, why don't you just use the iPad with the Apple Pencil and use that for notes. I did that for a while. I think it's a pretty good solution. The kind of blessing and curse of the iPad is that it's a full-fledged computing device. So if you're sitting there in an important meeting and you're trying to take notes, you're gonna have notifications flying in, you're gonna have to put in passwords, the thing might be receiving updates or whatever, which can be distracting. I like that the Remarkable does nothing beyond taking notes, which is also its Achilles heel. You pay $400 or $500 for a thing that's basically a fancy piece of paper. So moving on, the only other thing I have in my bag in terms of travel technology, and if I was going on an actual trip, I'd probably throw a water bottle in here. I have a super light Patagonia Windbreaker that I'll throw in here just in case things get colder than anticipated. I might have some running headphones or something in there. From a technology perspective, the only other thing I'll have a cord bag of some sort. And this is the one I'm currently running. It is a black Ember. I forget exactly what it's called, but I'll link all this stuff down in the comments. This is something that I really like the theory, and in practice, I haven't quite used it to its full potential. So it's sort of a generic cord bag. This little strap tucks in there. The idea is that if you were in Europe or somewhere where a man purse is socially acceptable.
It's a small men's carry-all.
I'm not carrying a purse.
It's not a purse. It's European.
Oh.
You could wear it as a little sling bag, and kind of throw this thing on, go out to the coffee shop or whatever, and have your kind of core technology with you. So it saves you from carrying a backpack around. My theory was I'm going to be hanging out with the cool digital nomad dudes in a non-chain coffee shop somewhere, drinking a coffee that I can't pronounce. And I'd have my laptop in this guy and have all my cords, headphones, whatever, be able to work endlessly. Hasn't really worked out that way. Generally this just stays in my bag and comes with me to the office and comes out with my cords. There are other options like this. I would recommend some sort of bag, even if it's as simple as just a drawstring stuff sack that keeps all your cords together so they're not swimming around all over your bag. The other quick tip on cords and stuff, once every 6 months or a year, take out your bag, take all the cords out, disassemble everything and just get rid of what you don't need. You can easily end up with a half dozen adapters and chargers and just junk that you don't need to be carrying around. Again, putting wear and tear on your body that's unnecessary. So in terms of what I have in this guy, I'll take everything out and kind of share it with you. Got the Apple AirPod Pros. I think these guys, I was kind of skeptical. I still think you look like a big dork when you wear these. Please don't wear them on conference calls unless you have to, because again, you look like a big dork. But what I like is the sound quality's okay, and the noise canceling is okay plus. I do have a nice pair of those Sony noise canceling headphones that again, I'll bring on a long international trip. But if I'm just going domestic, anything 3 hours or less, these will do a good enough job on the airplane for noise cancellation. And they take up way less space. They're way smaller. They use the Apple charger I already have. And they work pretty well with all the Apple devices as Apple is known for. So they'll switch relatively seamlessly between my MacBook, my iPad, and my iPhone. So the other thing I have that I think is a great thing, and again, I'll put a link to this, is this Anker PowerPort 3 is what it calls itself. And it's got 2 USB-C plugs and 1 standard USB plug. But it puts out something like, I think either 65 or 65 watts, it says on here. So it will power my MacBook Pro, it'll charge it and run it at the same time, and it'll also charge a USB device and then another USB-C, so a phone, tablet, or whatever. I've always carried some sort of multi-USB adapter. I hate having two things for my laptop and for all my devices. I'm glad the world has finally more or less agreed on a couple or three different standards between USB-C, mini USB, and Apple Lightning. But this thing's way smaller than an Apple adapter. It's way smaller than my work supply Dell power adapter. And this guy will charge and power both of them and is super small. And I like that the prongs tuck in, so these aren't gonna stab a hole in your bag or anything like that. So, this thing, forget how much I paid for it. It seemed like too much at the time, but this is kind of money in terms of reducing weight and reducing the complexity of your electronics loadout. Huge fan of this guy. This bag also has this little nifty magnetic keychain thing, so if you're driving your car to the airport or you're going and living that digital nomad dream, you can park your keychain in there and get it out of your pocket if that's a thing for you. And then this guy has one big pouch in the middle, so I'll show you what I got in there. I keep a pen in here. It's always good to have a pen, even though 99% of my life is digital. You never know when you're gonna need to scribble something down. In this mesh pouch, I've got three little things in here. I've got this Anker battery. I paid for all this Anker stuff. None of it was provided for me. They just seem to make pretty good stuff. So you'll see a few Anker things in here. This guy again is one of those super awesome things in theory. Haven't used it as much as I thought I would, but it serves as a little bit of a phone stand. You can do this little origami thing here, which I can't figure out at the moment, but essentially it'll let you stand up your phone on a table if you kind of want to read on your phone extensively. It's got the little MagSafe thing for the iPhone, so you can plop this guy on the iPhone and it sticks there with magnets and will charge it up. And then it's got a USB-C two-way port in the bottom, so theoretically you could use this to charge another device if you had the appropriate cable. It's kind of a nice little battery bank. I generally go back and forth on whether I include a battery bank with my weekly loadout. It's something I end up using once a year maybe, but when I need it, I really friggin' need it. Like it's, you've been on a plane and the power outlet doesn't work and you're delayed, 19 hours and you've got to get one critical call in to get someone to pick you up at the airport or some bizarre scenario like that, and your phone's out of juice. That's where these guys kind of pay for themselves. I wouldn't get a huge one because again, they're heavy and you end up carrying it around, but having one of these little guys or one of those lipstick sized ones is pretty good, cheap insurance. Another thing I like a lot, and I don't think they make this particular model anymore, I'll see if I can find an equivalent in the link, but this is a Logitech travel mouse. It's got kind of a nice clickiness to it. It's essentially all flat on the top. This top part is also touch sensitive, so you can kind of do the scroll wheel thing without there being a physical scroll wheel. And what I really like is that it's Bluetooth. There's a little button here so you can switch between two computers. So you can pair it to two separate devices if you have to carry a work computer and a personal computer. And it also has a micro USB plug so you can charge it up. So there's no batteries to worry about. This is one of those things that sits in my bag until I need it. And if it's out of juice, I can just plug it in and go take a coffee break. And in 15 minutes, it's got enough juice to last me for the rest of the day. So kind of a cool thing. I'm not someone that always needs a mouse when I travel, but nice to have for when you're doing more detailed work or you're clicking around on a spreadsheet or something like that. Not a bad addition. And in a similar vein, I've got this little SanDisk 256 gig memory stick. Again, one of these things I use once, twice a year, but when I need it, I really need it. With Dropbox and OneDrive and all that stuff, it's pretty easy to exchange files these days, but occasionally you need to move stuff around. What I like about this guy, it's got a regular USB. You flip them around, it's got a USB-C, so I can transfer stuff between the MacBook, which doesn't have a standard USB port on it. I can transfer stuff to the iPad. Rarely need it, but when I need it, nice to have. And this guy's super light. Other stuff in this magical pouch, I have a SanDisk 2 terabyte USB-C drive. What I use this for is mostly YouTube stuff. Video files are big. I can offload them from my camera. I put everything on here and then I can edit on either my MacBook if I'm traveling. I can edit on my Windows desktop. I have kind of all my work in progress stuff on here and then back it up to, offline storage when I get home and get done working on something. Probably not something you need if you're not dealing with huge video files, but these go on sale for Black Friday. So if you need a large quantity of external storage that's fast, that's pretty light and portable, People seem to like these SanDisks. I liked it a lot. Has built-in encryption, which is kind of cool. So, if I lose it, nobody's gonna find the top secret big heavy archives. Other things, got a USB-C to HDMI adapter, pretty self-explanatory. Thankfully a lot of the conference rooms are now getting wireless stuff, so you don't have to goof around with cables anymore. Probably the place I find myself using that most is if I want to watch a movie from my iPad or laptop in a hotel or something. You end up connecting up with USB. Got a little shorty USB-C cable for connecting that SanDisk drive to my MacBook, so not particularly exciting there. And then I have one of these off-brand Amazon card readers. I'll put a link to this one. I think I've referenced this before, but what I really like, it reads standard micro SD and mini SD cards, and it's got on one side a USB-C plug, and on the other side it's got this magical little foldable plug that can do both regular USB-A as well as micro USB. So this guy will work on Androids, iPads, Macs, all that stuff. They do make a version of these that has a lightning plug if you want it to work with your iPhone. But generally, if I need to deal with photos, I want to do it on my iPad instead. And that guy has the USB-C port. So we're almost to the end here. I've got some business cards in there, which I rarely use, but nice to have. Other thing I have is, who makes this? A Spigen or however you call it, multi-cable. Always recommend a multi-cable. One side it's regular old USB, other side it's got a magical plug that can alternate between micro USB, USB-C, and Apple Lightning. I think it works for both data and for charging, which is good. I pair that with this charger, obviously. Now that I've winnowed myself down to 3 or 4 different devices, I can generally keep all my stuff charged that I need to. One cable kind of gets me through. I like that it's a little longer. Sometimes hotels will have the outlet awkwardly far from your desk, or they'll have that outlet right on top of the desk that's been used so many times, everything flops around in there. So getting a longer cable is a nice idea. And similarly, I have a fairly long USB-C to USB-C cable. This one's a power-only cable. They also make USB-C data cables. The reason I got a power-only cable is, number one, it's cheaper. Number two, they can make them longer. I think this is like a 6 or 8 foot length, and it's a little thinner than a cable that supports data. So I basically just use it to charge my laptop. So that's the extent of my travel electronics. And this is pretty much what I'll bring, whether I'm going for 2 hours down to sit at a restaurant or a cafe or something when I just want to kind of get out and get a change of scenery, up to 2 or 3 weeks on the road. And what's nice is if I'm in a hotel, I can set up, I've got power, I've got my mouse, which is relatively comfortable and functional. I've got 2 terabits of local storage that's fast, so I can work with big files if I need to. And also all this stuff has really good battery longevity. I can get through a 5-6 hour flight without having to worry about power or those airplane outlets on the MacBook. Similar story with the iPad, and I can be productive from anywhere. In terms of a phone, I've got a Apple iPhone. I can't remember which one this is. I think it's the 13. This has one of those AT&T unlimited plans, so I can get mobile data. The iPad and MacBook connect to that very easily. It's like a one button, pretty seamless click, and it'll fire up the hotspot in this guy. Pretty much anywhere I can be productive, have high-speed data, have whatever I need. You can see I also have this little wallet guy on here. I've tried to reduce my cards and stuff that I carry around, so all I have really in here is my driver's license, a personal credit card, and a corporate card. I have more credit cards loaded up on the iPhone, so I can use those if I need them. And unless there's a specific situation, I don't really carry any cash, so that keeps my load light, keeps me from getting rolled and having a whole bunch of cash stolen, lets me kind of stay light and limber when I'm traveling. So that's my setup. Again, I'll put links to all this stuff down below where things have been discontinued, and I know this mouse is probably 5-6 years old at this point. I'll see if I can find a replacement and link that for you. But take the time, once in a while. If you're somebody that travels more than 5-6 times a year, it's worth, at least once every year, sitting down, taking all your stuff out, thinking about your setup and saying, hey, is there stuff in here I don't like? Is there stuff in here that causes me frustration and consternation when I'm on the road? You're already putting yourself through a lot of stress when you're traveling for work. So the more you can make your life easy, the more you can make it convenient, and the more you can make yourself productive, I find that makes travel a lot more seamless. And this is the Big Heavy wishing you peace, safety, and many upgrades in your travels. Thanks for watching. Ever wonder why every talking head on YouTube asks you to hit the like and subscribe button at the end of their video? You were right, because we're living in a computer simulation. And our benevolent robotic overlords get just a little bit of energy every time you hit that like. So, do me, the rest of civilization, and our benevolent robotic overlords a favor. Mash that subscribe, be kind to each other, keep living your simulated dreams.